Hello, vinyl community. This is John with Dry Tavern Road. This morning I was watching Jan from Pops and Clicks doing a response entry video to Middle Life Crises Rants. And I watched Wamkeem do his video, basically celebrating 100 ads, subscribers. And I wanted to take part in it since the deadline is a couple days from now. Show a record I listen to that's unexpected, and I would go for the mountains fading songs of the dulcimer and guitar. I love bluegrass music, folk music. I don't have a lot of it, but I've always enjoyed it. And this is kind of an unexpected part of my collection. And then basically going through a life of music. I was born in the late 50s. Music's been a huge part of my life, growing up with parents that loved to listen to soundtracks from The King and I to the South Pacific. They were also, my dad was from England, my mom was from Northern Ireland. They had this album, Roman in the Gloamin' by Kenneth McKellar, which is just a very fun romp. A young Scottish lad walking down the bonny banks of Clyde with his significant other. I got to travel quite a bit during the summers. My mom was a school teacher, and we'd go to Ireland and England, but then also take side trips. And in 1968, this 45 was Guantanamera, basically by Digno Garcia. And this is actually has 4 songs on it. They squeezed a lot over in Spain on 45s. Coming back home to Los Angeles, my neighbors had a lot of music going on. My buddy was the youngest of 6 kids, so great music selection. And I heard this song, Hurdy Gurdy Man by Donovan. And I loved it. They also had a drum set, so I got the first chance to actually play a musical instrument, just banging away, trying to keep up with Donovan on this. One of the first albums I ever bought as a kid was a good one, Cosmos Factory, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Before You Accuse Me, and the song I loved, Susie Q, on this one. After having many of their singles, first new Beatles album I bought in '68, The Beatles, also known as the White Album. This is not the original that I had, but did come across a poster, which is fantastic to capture the mood of that album. Another single that really struck with me was when the Beatles broke up and John Lennon and Yoko Ono had Cold Turkey. And actually the song I think I played more was Don't Worry Kyoko, Mama's Only Looking for a Hand in the Snow by Yoko Ono. Just her wailing in typical Yoko fashion, but it was completely unlike anything I ever heard. And also I followed the directions on the single to play loud. Getting back to traveling in 1973, during the summer I was in London, and all I heard that entire trip was Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. And that was an introduction to a band I would follow for the rest of their tenure, and absolutely loved. I think I listened to Physical Graffiti nonstop for a year without listening to anything else. But then in the '70s, one of the first concerts I got to go to was the Beach Boys. And actually had this as a cassette and didn't realize it wasn't a new album, but it's actually like their hits from 10 years before, but just a fantastic album. Of course, in '76, the album that was all over the universe was Frampton Comes Alive. And saw him in concert with Yes. And basically, after that concert experience, where we pretty much trampled on a baseball field, I retreated to the clubs of Los Angeles. And an artist that was appearing there, who just made a couple albums with Johnny Winter, was Muddy Waters, Hard Again. So going back to my love of Susie Q, Before You Accuse Me, basically blues tunes, I got to see a master at work. The period in LA had many groups that I loved. X the Band, The Blasters, and Los Lobos, who kind of before the La Bamba soundtrack became a mega hit. We're just making wonderful music all over the place in Los Angeles. It's always good to work with someone who has more musical knowledge than you. So when I was a kid, a friend lent me this, Customer Vibration, which is actually still one of my favorite Bob Marley albums. I remember, again, during that period, I was mentioning listening to Physical Graffiti quite heavily. One day I walked into a record store and heard Magnificent Seven. So The Clash entered my life. And again, I did not own a record player during this period, but just an amazing assortment of all types of music. A group I had actually seen on their first go-round, Talking Heads, and this album just came in with a resounding drum beat from the very beginning, with a Brian Eno production that was just incredible and really just struck a chord with me. An album has to be in my top 10 overall. I listen to quite frequently, so Talking Heads remain in light. In that same time period, while I loved Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, The Wall. This was a headphone album all the way, listening to it back to front. I always found I didn't just listen to one side, I just always liked to listen to the entire epic scope of The Wall. Would have loved to have seen this concert where they actually built a wall, but then later on, when Roger Waters kind of recreated it, I saw it locally here at a baseball stadium. First time since Peter Frampton had been to a baseball park. Radio played a huge part in early music in the 60s for me, and then also basically came in the 80s, K-Rock. So on there I heard How Soon Is Now, Smiths. Went to see them quite appropriately by myself because none of my friends wanted to go see the Smiths. So I'm very glad I did. And Morrissey's still at it. Johnny Marr's still at it. Unfortunately, we lost Andy Rourke recently, but still a band I love to listen to. An album kind of once I began my work career that reminded me of earlier times was Roxy Music, Avalon. Really just a beautiful production, even though there's a certain digital sheen that may not satisfy a lot of analog purists. I just love this album. And it's our last album, Our Way to Go Out. Hearing Stevie Ray Vaughan, again at a point when I was listening to a lot of electronic music and dance music, it just brought it all back home, as a great man once said. With Texas Flood, this is a great collection. I do need to get more of his individual albums, but this is a great assortment culled from all those albums. Stevie Ray Vaughan. Going back to where I went to school in Northern California, Grateful Dead was just in the air. Used to play the Pyramid concert in the Quad every week. But this is an all acoustic album. Came out in '81 by the Dead. There was an accompanying electric album called Dead Set. But this album just blew me away and inspired me to pick up the guitar. And I'm still playing Grateful Dead tunes to this day. Further on, as we move, I got married. My music was limited pretty much to driving in a car for work, a little bit at home too. But again, seeing bands on TV was a way of getting to do music. One of the bands, the Pixies, Doolittle. In 1994, the Woodstock performance that's on MTV, Nine Inch Nails came out and did a set, covered in mud, having mud fights. Again, just incredible. Also, With Teeth in 2006 is a great album that I like. And Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, their musical work, should say movie work, in Social Network and many other movies is fantastic. And then getting into this closer decade, now it's actually 10 years, but Beck with Morning Phase, incredible album. And then through the period of the last 3 years, I wish I had more new artist music. I need to work on that. But artists that I'd never heard of before. I was in a record store and I heard this album, the Latin Jazz Quintet. Just beautiful music. I've seen this on many, many VC channels and had to check it out. Bill Evans. And then I didn't realize he was on Kind of Blue as a piano player. And finally, with electronic music, got this series called Air Texture. I know nothing really of specific artists of electronic other than the fact that I really enjoy it and figured I'd start with a collection to determine the artists I like. So that is it. A life in less than 15 minutes. So great contest. Good luck on the subs. Thanks for watching.